Hey everybody, so I drive a BMW 328i, it's a 2013 model F30, and for a couple weeks I was having this kind of juddering feeling whenever I'd come to a slowed to complete stop at a stop sign stoplight, and my car would shake back and forth and then it would eventually turn off. It got a little bit better when I disconnected the battery terminal. There was a little bit of corrosion on there. I thought that was the fix to it, but it eventually came back and it just went back to the same thing where it would just kind of shake back and forth and then kind of like shut off. And I couldn't really figure out or pinpoint what was going on. So I did a little bit more digging and found out that it's probably a air leak. I have a launch diagnostic reader and I hooked it up to my car and it said my car was running pretty lean. The air to fuel mixture ratio was almost identical, so it's not supposed to be that way, I guess. And I couldn't really identify where specifically the leak was coming from. And I didn't want to take apart like every single hose just to figure it out. The only thing I was thinking of is that I replaced the air filter in the air box, and maybe I pulled on something a little bit too hard when I was taking the air box off and maybe cracked a hose somewhere down the line, but I couldn't find anything anywhere, and it was getting to be really frustrating being about like now 2 months in to having the same symptoms in my car. So I was actually going down the rabbit hole in YouTube and on Bimmer, and I noticed that there was one part on my engine cover that was a little bit more retrofitted and aftermarket from what I've seen from a lot of people. So there's this thing called the PCV valve cover that a lot of people probably know about. For a lot of models for BMWs, it will have a stem that comes off of the top of the PC valve cover. But anyway, so I have a retrofitted model and I will show that to you in a moment. But what I figured out was, I'll just show you right here. All right, so this is the piece that was actually faulty, and I'll show you in a moment. So essentially this is called the diaphragm for the PCV valve cover, and this is the cover itself. So this is what you'll see on the top of the engine cover right here, and if you see real closely, there is a little hole right in there, and it allows air to go in and out to allow for this diaphragm to go up and down to allow for, I don't know, pressure modulation or something like that. And then I'll show you what happened to mine specifically and where you can find it on your car. This is the piece I was talking about. This is the original one that I took off my car. So there's that little hole that allows airflow to come in under this PCV valve cover. And then here is, they call it the diaphragm. This is just a piece of rubber. It goes up and down. It's very flimsy. But what I noticed is when I took it off, I couldn't really find anything until I pushed down. I noticed that, well, there's a big hole in here. And I didn't just do that. That was on there. And I'm guessing that's where the air leak was coming from. So I actually went to AutoZone. I normally order off of FCP Euro, but I wanted this today. $47, not too bad. But I essentially just popped open the hood, took off the engine cover, and then I took off this piece right here, the PCV valve cover, and then I threw the new piece on there, the new diaphragm, and then it came with the new spring, so that's why that one's there. And then I just snapped it back into place, and I noticed an instant difference. So I'm gonna go show you where it is specifically on my car, and hopefully if somebody else has a car that's kind of retrofitted like mine, I can tell it was messed with, and it looks different than the original like OEM. So I'll show you in 1 second here. All right, so here's my engine and the valve cover, and this is the piece I was talking about. So this is the new one. I just got, some people I've seen take a flathead screwdriver and they just pry it right underneath and then pop them out. I guess if you're buying a new one, it's not a big deal if you snap off these little connecting parts, but I didn't know if that was the actual problem, so I was super careful, and I used a metal pick tool that I just picked up from, like, I don't know if it was O'Reilly's or something like that, but it's just any pick tool could get under there, and you just want to be really careful to just kind of slowly bring it up, because these things are kind of stuck on there hard, and yeah, it takes a minute to get them up. But yeah, I got it. And one test I saw people doing, sorry, this light's in the way. So over here you can see, all right, so there's the hole right there, and people do what's called a suction test. And essentially, you get a lighter and you light it, and then you see if the flame gets pulled into that hole, and you know you have a ruptured diaphragm if that works. I didn't want to put a flame over my engine. I just didn't want natural selection to take its course for me. So what I did is I just put my finger right onto the hole, and then I could feel the pull and I could feel the suction. So that's another way you can just test it. It naturally will allow air in and out, just because the diaphragm goes up and down. There's negative and positive pressure that will be applied, so you will feel that. However, this was different. It was just a constant suction, just kind of like a vacuum. So that's one thing that you can just kind of look out for. All right, so if you're running into issues kind of like I was, where you're having this air leak and you can't find a crack anywhere, I would say check this PCV valve cover and check this diaphragm, because if you do have a break in there, and something, I mean, that's pretty significant for me, but I've seen people online with ruptured diaphragms that, you know, it's much smaller than that. It's like a needle size. It doesn't take a lot. It's just an air leak, so it's not what it's supposed to be able to read. And what I noticed was that on the way to getting this new diaphragm, I filled up my car, and instead I had like 380 miles till empty, and I drove about 4 miles, and then it dropped down to like 370. So it was using gas. It was running really rich. So I don't know if that was compensation because the O2 sensor was reading something that wasn't supposed to be reading. But anyway, as soon as I popped this new diaphragm in, I noticed that it was just stabilized. Like I drove 1 mile and then it dropped 1 mile. So it's like pretty accurate that it kind of auto-corrected once I put that new diaphragm in and the new PCV valve cover. So I hope that helps anybody else out there that's running into any issues kind of like similar like I had. It's a really simple fix, and like I said, not all of the PCV valve covers are going to look like this. Some of them might have a little bit of a nipple or a tip coming off of this that where a hose connects to, but mine didn't, just because it was retrofitted. And yeah, hope that helps. Hope that will kind of speed up your recovery mode of trying to figure out what's going on with your car.